Okay, now we're good.
Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call to order the Pennsylvania County Board of Supervisors joint meeting with School Board Tuesday, February the 6th, 2024 at 2 p.m. Board Meeting Room, 39 Bank Street, Chatham, Virginia. Ms. McCluster, would you have the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Bowman.
Here.
Mr. Dudley.
Present.
Mr. Height.
Here.
Mr. Ingram.
Here.
Mr. Whittle.
Here.
Mr. Tucker.
Present.
Mr. Dalton.
Here. Ms. Hancock, would you call your roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Dawes? Ms. Merritt? Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Henderson? Mr. Mills? Mr. Shields? And Mr. Moon is absent.
Thank you, Ms. Hancock. Moving to item 3, are there any items to be added to the agenda? Not hearing any, we'll move to item 4. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Ingram, second by Mr. Tucker. Any discussion on the motion? Not hearing none, we're ready to vote, gentlemen.
Does it give you a yes or a no? All right. I'll get yours verbally. Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Moving to item 5, presentations. School Board 1% sale tax project. Dr. Mark Jones. Welcome, sir. Mic's on.
One more person say that. Turn that mic on.
Mr. Dalton,
There we
members of the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Dawes, members of the school board, I'd like to provide information first today regarding the sales tax referendum. A lot of capital projects that are going on in the school division. Figure this out here. Down. I'd like to talk to you about our capital projects that are underway, talk about funding, the source of funding, and then we'll finalize with sales tax referendum money. We've completed our projects at PCTC. This is a picture of the roof. We've replaced the roof. We've done a lot of inside work, the HVAC. All that we paid for utilizing other funds outside of sales tax referendum money. This slide here gives you an idea of what we're looking at for sales tax. We're first going to do the security vestibules this summer in our 10 elementary and 4 middle schools at a cost of about $2.5 million. We also have detached gyms at several of our elementary schools. We want to enclose the walkways so students do not have to go outside to go to the gyms. We'll make them accessible from the outside for the night practices that take place with Parks and Rec and for the individuals using the gym, so there'll be an entryway into that. But we want to be sure that kids don't have to go outside to go to our gyms. And then we're also going to do HVAC and window replacements at several of our schools. There are 5 elementary schools: Chatham, Hurt, Southside, Stony Mill, Mount Airy, and Union Hall. We're going to talk about, in particular, Stony Mill, how we picked up some additional funding to take that off of this list. And then we're going to replace our mobile units with classrooms at Kentuck, Southside, and Stony Mill. And that's the first phase. The second phase would be to eliminate the mobile units at the other elementary schools, Mount Airy, Hurt, and Union Hall. Chatham Elementary School, we have some work that we need to do there. We have a couple of unique programs there. One is a STAR program for students with autism. We'd like to do some things to enhance the opportunities there in that building. And then we have some facilities that we need to repair there at Chatham Elementary School as well. Talked about, we applied for SCAP funding a couple of years ago and received that. So the SCAP funding, which is a School Construction Assistance Program grant from the State Department, we secured funding to pay for the PCTC roof, the HVAC, at a cost of about $2.8 million there. And then Stony Mill HVAC, we're going to use $1.8 million of that to cover, of the SCAP money to cover Stony Mill. If you recall, that was on the sales tax referendum list. In that, we also have the SCAP money that we're going to apply for. And if we get that, of about $5 million, if we get that, that will help us with Southside HVAC, Union Hall HVAC, and Kentuck addition. This last table here kind of gives you an idea of how we've spent money and how we plan to spend money. If you look at the first column, gives you the projects. The second column gives you total cost. And then if it has local, we've used local operating funds to cover it. Then we have state school. And then we have the 1% sales tax. So on that list of about, I think that's about $35 million, $35 or $36 million, only about $1.7 million of that list will be covered under sales tax. The rest we found grants to cover that, or we can use carryover money to cover. So we've done a whole lot to really further the use of the sales tax money for projects. And we will continue to do that over the years. As grants become available, we will seek those grants out to take the burden off of the locality, as well as to hopefully extend the use of sales tax referendum money. Ms. Worley, anything that I need to share in addition to it? Yeah, please do. She put this together.
Take you through this. I know it's tiny, so I hope you'll be able to look at it later. But what we were trying to show is how much money has been spent in the past 3 years on school construction capital projects. 3 HVAC projects. You see the broadband project that we're working with you, the county, on. We have roofs. We have a ball field lighting and a cold storage chiller at Gretna High School. And we just wanted to show the total cost of these projects. We've used some local money. We've used some year-end money. Of course, back during when we ended 2020, we were able to carry over some money for some capital projects because schools were closed. We saved money in transportation, lots of other areas, and we wanted to use that for capital projects. I want you to see that we have used about $18 million, I need eyeglasses myself, of CARES money that we've received, and there's some other information forthcoming about that, but we've used that on capital projects. The SCAP funding is School Construction Assistance Program. We did apply for the PCTC project and Kentuck. We received funds for that. You can see those on the sheet. We applied in November of '23 for money for Kentuck's addition, Southside and Union Hall's HVAC. And if funded, we could receive up to $5 million to help with that project. So that's also freeing up some sales tax money because, as you know, the sales tax list is large. Want to take your attention to the solar column. We are in a 25-year solar contract with Tribe, am I right? Sun Tribe. And we use some savings to help with roofing replacements on the middle schools. Right now we have solar panels on our high schools that are functioning, correct? Yes. And the next step are middle schools and Twin Springs. So we did use some savings to help with the roofs there. And they are getting ready to start installing on middle schools and Twin Springs panels. Wanted to mention on the storage chiller, the cold storage chiller at Gretna High School, we are working with Train, and we're going to, it looks like a lot of work. I'm just going to tell you what we've seen so far. but we are going to be able to apply for an energy tax credit. This is something new. Normally, you have to be a tax-paying entity to receive a tax credit, but that has changed, and government entities, schools will be able to apply for this credit up to 50% of the cost of that, and we will receive the money back from that. So we are going to be working with Train on that. I did want to mention a couple things not on the list. You know, we have secured a maintenance building here in the town of Chatham. We've been looking for maintenance storage for quite some time. You know, big storage buildings are very expensive to build. So when we finish up this project, we're still doing some work on it. We're going to spend about $600,000, and we have a pretty nice looking inside anyway. Office space for our maintenance staff, and we have 3 warehouses with over 29,000 square foot of storage, and it's right here in the town of Chatham. So it's very convenient to the central office. And, you know, we really think that we've done a great job managing that project. And I also wanted to just mention, if you go back to 2005, 2006, we have entered into 3 separate performance contracts totaling $10.3 million. We've used that money to replace and update lighting, controls, boilers, chillers, rooftop heating and air units at Twin Springs, several other items. I'm sure I did not go back and look through all of that. And we're paying that back with savings in our utilities. So we just want to remind you and to let you know that we have been and continue to be good stewards of taxpayer money and are continuing to work to help, you know, further these projects. So I think that's all. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
We have staff that seek out good deals, and really to think good stewards. I really feel like we are good stewards. We look for additional funding to pay for things. Appreciate the good work of our staff. So now I want to share with you a little bit about the school division as we talk about any questions regarding sales tax, capital projects before we go to.
Mr. Chairman. Oh,
Yes,
that's
Yes,
a
sir.
big voice. Could I ask a question, please, Dr.
yes,
Jones?
sir, absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Jones. 2 questions, please, and you just mentioned those, and for myself and anyone that doesn't know, the CARES Fund, ARP funds that were received, when do those have to be spent by, and how much do you have left?
Well, I'm going to say 25 and 26, and now I'm going to say,
We have a slide coming up on that.
Okay.
Can we wait
Oh, I can
till
wait.
then to answer the question? Is that okay?
That's fine, absolutely. Second question I've got is, explain carryover funds, and what does this mean?
well, carryover funds are funds that we have at the end of the year. You know, we have a large budget, about over $100 million. To land that on a dime on June 30th, paying bills, you've got fuel costs, you've got a lot of things coming in, it's difficult to do. So what we do, Mrs. Worley does, is she anticipates the amount of money that we will have left over at the end of the year, and then she works with Mrs. Vanderhyde, and through the Board of Supervisors, in an agreement, we're allowed to carry that money over to pay for things that we had in this year. A good example would be bus leases. Sometimes the bus leases don't come in, and so those things are paid out.
Some of it is state money that has to be spent on certain projects. Textbooks is one item, and if we do not do a implementation that year, we need to roll that money over to the next year. So there are certain things that the state allows to be carried over as well as any other operational. And we generally provide a list. I mean, it's detailed. You know exactly. It may be a certain grant that the money's being carried over for the next year, or if there are maintenance projects that are ongoing, that is all detailed
Okay,
for the carryover.
good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Any more questions, Dr. Jones?
Tracy, how quick can we get a copy of that? How quick can we get a copy of this?
This presentation?
Yeah, please. No, I'm not talking about right now, but shortly thereafter, please. Yes, please, thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions for Dr. Jones? All right, we good. Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to item 5B. School Division budget request. Will be Dr. Mark Jones again.
Okay.
He will play.
Thank you all for this opportunity
Yes,
again. As any superintendent or school board member would do, I want to share some good things that are going on in our school division as we begin today. And you probably can't see this, but these are graphs of student achievement data, pass rates for SOL testing since 2015-16. And if you look at, there are two bars, and that represents 1 year. And the first bar is in orange, and that's the state numbers, and then the blue bar is Pennsylvania County. So if you look beginning in 15-16, every blue bar is higher than the gold bar or orange bar. So that indicates that Pennsylvania County schools pass rates are above the state average. And we've continued to do that. If you look at the circle, the 2018-2019, if you recall, that's the year before COVID. We went out, I believe, March 13th of 2020. But so if you look at the next year, the next time we have test results will be 2021, and look how far they dropped off. That's that lag year that we lost ground because of COVID. But if you still look, our test scores were above the state average, and that's mathematics is the first set of tests across. If you look at reading, I think we're very proud of reading and the job that we're doing in reading. If you look at the same time frame, 18-19, if you look at the drop the next year in reading, the reading drop we didn't drop that far. So to me, it supports the good work our teachers are doing in reading and in teaching reading to kids early. I would imagine during that time you can only surmise that you'd hope they're home reading. Whereas mathematics, you probably need a math teacher. But look at our scores, we're bouncing back. If you look at the final circle there, that's the 22-23 school year. Our scores are almost back to where they were. And again, we're above state average. Same thing, you can see this is for science. You can see the same results for science. And history, social science as well. In every area, we're above the state average pass rates. We're a rural school division. Our per pupil expenditures are not high. And so I think it just supports, again, a good return on investment to you all. And then this is our writing rates, and so you see the same thing for writing. Any questions regarding SOL testing? All right, this is when you take the pass rates, and this is for the last tested year, 22-23. That's the results that we're basing this on. And we've taken the surrounding counties, any county that touches us. So we've listed Franklin, Campbell, Bedford, Halifax, Henry. Then we included Martinsville and Danville City. And these are math pass rates. If you look in the red, we're 16th best pass rates in math in the state. And there are 134 school divisions. We're 16th best. We're in the top 12%. And then if you look at and then down below is how we shake out with our surrounding counties. Pennsylvania County is, I think that's 80.26% pass rate. And then we have Franklin, Campbell, Bedford, Halifax, Henry, Martinsville, and Danville, and their pass rates there. And this is for mathematics. If you look at reading, the same. We are the 20th best in reading. We're in the top 15% in the state of 134 school divisions. And then we're 79.39% pass rate. And we're Pennsylvania counties first, Bedford, Franklin, Campbell, Halifax, Henry, Martinsville, and Danville City, in that order. And if you look at science, we're the 22nd best in science. That's the top 16%. If you compare us, we're at 74.26%. It's Pennsylvania, Franklin, Bedford, Campbell, Halifax, Henry, Martinsville, and Danville City. Next, we'd like to talk about the 5 blue ribbon schools. We are tied for the most number of blue ribbon schools amongst the counties in Virginia. And most recently, we're recognized at the award ceremony in Washington, D.C., Southside and Union Hall this past November. But early, if you recall, in 2003, Mount Airy was the first blue ribbon school. Union Hall, Tunstall High, and now 2 more Southside and Union Hall. This is a picture that was in the paper here recently of Mrs. Mond and Dr. Hackworth and Mrs. Mayhew. They all graduated from Lynchburg College. They were invited back by the Dean of Education for this picture here because they were all alumnus there. Speaks volumes for them.
They all three graduated.
All 3 graduated Pennsylvania County Schools too, so. Yeah, and you know, not many schools are recognized. There were only 10 schools this year in the state recognized as Blue Ribbon schools. I want to kind of go through, I could spend all day talking about schools, but I'm just going to go through a pathway that we've just recently implemented, and we're finally at the final last stages of this. And this is the STEM, Career Connections, Advanced Manufacturing, Health Sciences pathways. These are our middle school students in the Career Connections Lab, and there they have experience with a lot of different careers, but electrical engineering, mechanical, manufacturing engineering, welding, precision machining, marketing, health sciences. They're exposed to a lot of different careers in that exploratory wheel while they're in middle school. Next, they have the opportunity to enroll in, register, and apply for the 9th and 10th grade transition classes, and those are health sciences and advanced manufacturing, and then they also can take an environmental science and a biology class. Students are transported like they go to PCTC, but they go to our STEM Academy, 9th and 10th grade during their 1 semester of their 9th and then 1 semester of their 10th grade year. It's been very successful. And then they can choose between 20 different programs at the Career Technical Center, or they can go to AET, the Governor's School, or they can stay at the base school and earn dual enrollment or any type of credit that they wish to earn. Any questions regarding just a kind of snapshot of Pennsylvania County schools? Okay, no questions? Okay, next, talking about funding. If you're familiar with Virginia funding formula, it's called the LCI, or Local Composite Index. That is changed or adjusted every 2 years, and it's based on the true value of property, adjusted gross income, taxable retail sales, average daily membership, and then total population. Currently, Radford City has the lowest composite index of 0.1658. Then Alexandria, Arlington, Bath, Fairfax Falls, Church, Goochland, Highland County, Surrey, they have the highest composite index of 0.8. The higher the composite index, the more the locality pays. So the lower Radford City, they would pay less locally than Arlington. This is the formula. It's a pretty complex formula, but it takes local true value of property divided by ADM. So they base the top numbers on ADM, which is average daily membership in our local schools for the county schools, and then the ADM for the state. And then they take the local adjusted gross income divided by local ADM, and then the state adjusted gross income divided by state ADM, and then they take local taxable retail sales divided by ADM, local ADM, and then they take sales for the state divided by state ADM. They factor that by 0.5 times local true value of property, 0.4 times the gross income, and 0.1 for taxable retail sales. They do the same thing based upon total population of the state. And from that, 67% or 2/3 is based on your local, based on ADM, and then 1/3 is based on population, total population. And it's then 0.45 of that. And so that's the formula. They just take our numbers and they plug it into this formula every 2 years, and that's how they come up with the local composite index. As you're aware, our composite index has gone up about 1.3%. So it was about 0.25 the last biennium, and it's about 0.2642. Yeah. now, so it's gone up about 1.3%. So then we base our funding per pupil. You take your ADM, you take your per pupil amount, you multiply it together, and that gives you your total operating funds, your total budget. So right now, the average per pupil funding for the state is about $15,541 per child in the school division. Our funding is $12,913, and that's the most recent figures that I could find. If we take Danville City, I always like to compare us with Danville City. They get $18,329 per student, and we get $12,913, so about $6,000 difference per child. Our local per pupil comparison, and that's how much the locality contributes. Funding is based on three big pockets, pools of money: state, local, and federal. And there's some grants that come in, but for the most part, those are the three big pockets of money. And so the local piece of that, ours is $2,349. If we compare our local to Danville's local is $4,891 and ours is $2,349. Comparing us with other localities that touch us, Henry is the only one lower than us. And then the bottom calculation is if I took Danville's per pupil, subtracted our per pupil, that's the difference of $2,542. If I multiplied that times our approximate ADM of 7,500 students, if we received Danville's local per pupil, we would receive $19 million more dollars for Pennsylvania County schools. That's return on investment that you guys are seeing. Our staff does a lot with the funding that we get. It speaks volumes about what they do. Okay, Ms. Worley, I think this is your part. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if you don't mind, I've got a question. Before you get off of these slides here,
Yes, sir.
I can see why the mathematics is very high because of that calculation we had to walk through there.
Okay.
There's no way I could do it. I mean, just to see a couple slides back.
Okay.
So when you're comparing Pennsylvania County, it looks like Danville is the only metropolitan area you're comparing. The rest of them are county,
They are.
right?
They are.
So is that a fair comparison to Danville? I'm curious because they have more resources, more revenue streams than we do, and that we can get. I mean, they can actually go out and implement their own taxes. We can't do that
Much
unless
different,
we've got a referendum. So
Yeah.
is it really a fair comparison? I'd much rather see it compared to the regular counties like
And we can do that.
listed up here.
We can do it. I can just ballpark. Let's say if Halifax is about $700 difference. So if I multiplied that times 75, so let's say it's 1,000, make my math easier. That's $7.5 million. Subtract probably about $5 million difference. Am I right there, Ms. Worley? Between us and Halifax, that's $700 difference a child.
Yeah, it's a big difference, though.
Yeah, it would be.
But
We just use
but
Danville
I'm saying
because they're here.
It's a big difference if you're comparing those two versus Danville.
Times 7,500 is $5 million.
Five-
5,017,500.
$5 million. The difference between just us and Halifax is $5 million.
Okay.
So that's a lot of money there.
Dr. Jones?
Yeah.
But talking about Danville, that's just an informational point. that-
It's- yes,
Because
it's
of where
just
we live, and
information,
everybody compares the city to the county.
Yeah, they do.
So,
They do.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still not going to change where we're at on this scale.
It won't. I just do that just to
Yeah.
show you the difference.
I know, but it's an awful big difference. It's an
It is
awful
a big
one.
difference.
So it's,
Yeah.
when I look at that, I'm
Yeah.
going, okay, are these apples to oranges or apples to apples?
Yeah.
And so I look at the counties, comparison.
Well,
I appreciate that.
let's use Campbell. Campbell's that's $1,000 difference there in Campbell's. So you take 1,000, that's $7.5 million there.
Sure.
Just Campbell. And so you think Campbell's similar to us. That's what is a 1% salary increase? That's 740?
So 1% for us is about $760,000.
So, that could really help us with salaries for staff, to keep staff members here. And I'll do that differently the next time. I just always use Danville because we're compared
No,
with
I'm
Danville.
not asking you to do it there. I'm just looking at it, and I'm going, okay, I'm the casual observer here. I want to look at it and say, okay, are we really comparing, like things, or you throw one out there and it kind of skews the numbers?
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we're looking at the same thing here.
Yes, sir.
I think it also shows that you guys are being better stewards with your money.
Absolutely.
You
Well,
got them up here getting all the money, and look at their ratings there at the bottom. You say, I'm just saying, so.
We're large, we have a lot of miles to travel, large, so we're very, very spread out. So there's a lot of difference things that we do. Yeah, good point.
Well, the composite index changes too when you have economic development.
Right, agree. Understand. Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Yep. Good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
sir.
Yes, sir.
All right.
That bottom one, okay. I think I can see it.
Welcome, Ms. Worley.
Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Jones.
Miss Worley,
Good job.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but if there's conversation that the school board wants to speak, do you mind pulling that mic off and just letting them have that mic, just so that anybody that's watching, or if we ever need to go back and look at that, we can have that on there?
I will be glad to
Thank
do that.
you.
You're
Oh,
very
Scott's
welcome.
coming
Scott
with another
has
mic.
one. We're good. Thank you, Scott.
Okay. All right, so let's look at this slide. So the localities that are chosen. Okay, there we go. The localities that we chose are localities that are around us. That is, our board had asked us to look at that because we're all sort of in the same area. Of course, you do have Danville City, and the rest are counties. So this, so our budget was amended by the General Assembly in September of 2024. And we received at that time a new calc tool. I'm sure all of you are somewhat familiar with that. And that tells us the money that we're going to receive from the state based on our ADM, the different pots of money, and then it shows what the local match is for each one of those programs. So what I have done here is just to show what other localities around us look like. So you can see Danville City, you've got Henry County. Over to the side, the notes, the per DOF, I actually spoke with the Director of Finance. Some I got off the news, some I was not able to contact. And then, of course, the bottom is us. And this is really just to show what local funding looks like for our surrounding areas. And you can see that Henry County, they're funded about 18.7% above their local required minimum. It goes anywhere from 44 at Franklin County, 53 Danville City. Halifax, I was not able to get in contact with anyone there. I do have what their minimum is because I can look that up myself. So that's where I got those numbers. But just wanted to show Pittsylvania County. And the note I have to the side, these numbers are always changing. Our ADM is always changing. When we receive new budget information, the state will give us an ADM number that they have calculated. Generally, it is pretty close, and we normally use that number for budgeting purposes. So when we adopted our budget in June of '23, with the ADM and with what was called the skinny budget, at that time, the $22 million that the county had appropriated for us was actually about 8.85% above the minimum. But when the General Assembly came back in September and amended the budget, and I just sent up information for a budget amendment over $5 million, a lot of that money required local match as well. So now we're looking at being just 5.95% above the minimum. And that will change again between now and March 31 because that's what our final numbers are based on, will be our March 31 ADM. And I do think that's going to be a little higher than what we budgeted, not a lot, but a little bit. So Let me make sure I don't have any other notes there. We just wanted to share that information with you, so if I can make this work. I did want to show you where the county stands right now. And if you look back to fiscal year, so we're going to look at this in bienniums. So in 21-22, the local composite index was 24.46%. And you can see in 21, the funding was 24% above the minimum required. In 22, we dropped down to 18.5. And you can see there, the increase from the locality was $250,000 that year. So we dropped, so evidently state monies were going up, ADM was changing, and so it drops us to 18.5. But you can see in 23-24, we had an increase in our composite index, which means the locality's ability to pay increased and the amount they needed to provide increased. And so even though in 23, you provided an additional over $1.3 million, we still dropped down to only 6.7% above the minimum. And then you can see where we stand right now. We're averaging about 6% above the minimum. I was looking back at 1920, the local composite index for 1920, those two school years was 24.43. So in a year, then you come to 21-22, it didn't change that much. So the funding was still, still pretty high above the minimum. So you can see what that number, does to you. Any questions about
Yes.
that? Or
Yes, I do. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So, on this, and again, I'm not familiar with this, so bear with me when I ask
Okay,
these
you're fine.
stupid questions, okay?
No stupid questions.
The local composite index is generated at the state level, is that correct? Okay, and it's applied across the state of Virginia. So when we start basing everything on that, we can actually pay more money, as you show here, but we can fall when it comes to the percentage of money
Above the minimum.
above the composite index. So do we have to abide by the composite index?
Sorry. Yes, sir. That is the
By-
funding method, and that,
But who says that? Is it in a
the
state
state,
code?
the General Assembly.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, I'm trying to figure this thing out, because if they have the ability to say, this is what you have to go by, and then they have the ability to pull money back, and now we all of a sudden have to make up that difference, we're in a hole forever. We'll never dig our way out of this thing. So where's the latitude for the local government here to look at this? Because I'll be honest with you, when I look at this here, and you've already gone $1 million plus over what you did, or what we did the year before, and you still fell down, that doesn't show, me that we'll ever get anywhere we need to be. And I hear it, I mean, I'm listening. How many counties we got, George? 120 some, and we're at where? Yeah,
We're-
so
I haven't looked lately, but we're
we'll never climb
low.
out of that hole at this rate. So there's got to be something here that we can actually work with without.
Yes,
breaking
the
the
only thing
bank.
that I can tell you, unfortunately, we have no latitude. I mean, this is, I don't want to call it the law, but it is what we have to follow. The General Assembly, along with VAS and other organizations, they are working to maybe change this methodology, but until that happens, this is what we have to work with.
Sure.
Microphone.
Sorry.
Microphone,
I'm
Dr.
sorry.
I am
Jones.
so sorry.
The average for the state is about 72% above SOQ, and we are about in the bottom 5 to 10 school divisions as far as per pupil funding. So it's 6%. And a few years ago, if you recall, we had changes that took place. We had more students showed up, and so the school board had to go back to the Board of Supervisors and request additional funds because you were below the required local minimum. So that would be a requirement. If you ever drop below it, you'd have to make
Sure.
up the difference. So.
Sure, understand. Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
and to my colleague, we have to be careful in terms of what we ask for. We might get it, and we might not want it because, when you look at the local composite index and you imagine Northern Virginia, if they change it, it will be skewed or weighed heavily in that, that urban area favor. So as to, that would actually take money away from, our rural communities and our rural schools. So I understand what you're saying in theory. However, I think, we have to kind of deal with what we have here now and hope that they don't really change the matrix in terms of how our schools are funded. Even though we might show 6% there, but, obviously there should be more money coming from the state and federal government this time. Is that right?
No, sir, we're getting to that as well.
Okay.
When our composite index goes up and more is required of the locality, we receive less from the state.
Okay.
That is how that works, so,
Okay.
Ms. Worley, now as the enrollment goes up, y'all get more, because you get so much per child,
yes.
per student, right?
Yeah, our enrollment does dictate that.
Okay, where are we at on enrollment now?
7,500?
So we are right now, this year's budget was based on 7,450 students.
Okay.
Right now, we are at about 7,500. That number will change between now and March 31, and we'll have a final official number. So we are
So
looking
will it
at.
will that number go up or go down, you think, typically?
So typically, in the
History.
pre-2020, that number always went down.
Okay.
After the fall, it might start going up a couple of months, but then especially December, January, February, it would start going down a little bit.
Okay.
But since COVID, the last 2 years, that number has actually increased every month. So it's very difficult for us right now to project what we think that number may be. We've tried to go back and trend something over the last couple of years, but it is unlike nothing I have ever seen in education. I will tell you that, is for that number to go up during the time, especially after the first semester.
Right.
It might change in January, but then normally it would go down. But the past 2 years, it has gone up every month. Okay, so let's move on to, will help you with the federal funding cliff. I wanted to go back, and even after I pulled this together this morning, I still forgot 2 pots of money, and that's money we received from the county, because we receive money for Chromebooks from the county as well. But you can see that CARES money, COVID money, whatever, however you want to call it, we have received about $29.5 million since the beginning of the 2021 school year. You can see that the majority of that has been spent. We're down really to about ARP3, the $15 million number. We have until September of '24 to spend that. There's some after-school money, and then there is a little pocket of some HVAC money that we receive from the state, and we do have until December for that, but we're using that money on the Stony Mill project. So the reason I wanted to show this to you, we've had over $29 million really just infused into our school system for the last couple of years, and all of that money is going away. Now, out of the $29 million, we've spent a little over $18 million on capital projects. So that is one-time projects. But the remaining amount of those funds have been spent operationally. They have been spent, we spent a lot of money in the beginning, obviously, on supplies that we had to have, petitions and storage areas to, get desks and things out of classrooms. But we have spent a large amount of this money on tutoring our students, on summer school. We've added positions in our schools, and we've spent a lot of money on, and I hope I'm using the right terminology, but mental health supports, okay, things to help our students. And we've spent several $1 million on this. When this funding ends, thankfully, in this year, when the budget was amended, we are receiving a little over $4 million in state funding. It's called all-in funding, We had to write a plan, how over the next 2 years, how we're going to spend that money. So we're actually going to pick up some of these items. We're going to pick up some of these reading specialists. We're going to pick up tutoring. We're working on absenteeism. We're going to pick up some of these mental health support programs that we are having in our schools. So we're going to be able to make these last a couple more years, but after that, we will not have funding to continue these programs. And I think that you can see that a lot of this has certainly made a difference in our students over the years, especially with the tutoring, the money that we're spending there. We have aides, and we opened it up to all of our schools for an additional aide position. And, you know, that is just a position that every school needs more of. But all of those will go away at the end of this school year because we do not have funding to keep those positions for our schools, unfortunately, into the future. And I think we were at a meeting, I did look these numbers up, Dr. Jones. The state of Virginia employs 21,000 and some odd number of teacher aides in their schools. But the funding that they receive from the state to pay for those is funding for 2,800 positions. So localities are funding the difference. And I think you all know, if you've had any dealings with a school, how important that one position is, you know, to our staff and our students as well.
Question?
So does that answer your questions on COVID money?
Almost. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
ARP 3, is that the balance we have to spend? And I
No,
say
that
we-
was the total amount of money that we received from each one of
So
those
this is-
allocations.
And this is all federal money?
This is all federal money.
No state money, no local money. So what's our current balance?
I should have known you would ask me that. We have spent a great deal of that money. We are probably, I'm scared to say, but we're down to $3 or $4 million maybe. We still have some, I know we have a little over $1.5 million to spend on Stony Mill. We're still paying some tutoring. I don't know, Ms. Petty, do you know the balance? It's in that area. It will be spent by September 30th of 2024.
I'm sure it will, because we don't.
It's been allocated and it's been approved. We did, so all of this money you see here, other than two pots, the top one, the CRF funding, and the IDEA ARP funding, we actually had to write grants for this money, big packets, telling how we want to spend that money and have that approved. And anytime we want to make a change in that, we have to amend those grants and have that approved before we can spend that money. So.
Right, okay. And the second question is, and you mentioned it, and I'm just curious about this because the sheriff is famous for doing this. He's going out and getting grants for bringing in SROs, and in 3 years or so, we end up having to keep those SROs on the budget line item, if you will, because now we've embedded them into the daily workforce and we just can't get rid of them. You mentioned that a number of people have been brought on through the pandemic, if you will, this 3 years, 36 months. And now, once this money is expended, then we're going to have to pick up, if you want to keep these folks, we're going to have to pick up the salaries, benefits, everything else for these folks, right?
So so they were hired as a one-year position. So, you know, they knew when they accepted this job, you know, that it was limited by funding and that it was just a one-year position that would end June 30, or when school ends in May. So, you know, do we want to keep them? Absolutely, we want to keep them. But we know that the situation that we're in right now, that we can't. So now we will have some turnover, obviously, retirements and resignations. We always have special ed assistant positions, which is not a benefit position, but it is a yearly position. So there will be some opportunities for them to stay in the school system if they wish, but not at this current job.
Okay, so when this, are you looking at the future going, excuse me, September is the end date for this? You've got folks already on the payroll using this money here. Are they going to be factored into your new budget that you're going to be proposing to us?
No, they are
Okay.
not.
Not as full-time
They go
people?
away with the funding.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
That's all.
Would there be grants out there to reach out to save them? Or do you?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, so now let's look at current year. I don't know if we want to call this our request today, because we only have the governor's version. And what we are hearing is that the House and Senate is going to be much better for schools. But, you know, we'll believe that when we see it, right?
That's right.
So we have to start with something.
We ain't
So
done
we
yet.
just, what we really want to let you know is where we are today. So the governor's proposed budget, that came out in December, and with that, our state revenues are going down by $931,000. So when I look at this year's state money for operations and look at next year in the governor's budget, we're getting a decrease of almost $1 million. You can see where the local effort is going up about $800,000, and that's just to meet the minimum. So there's your offset in that change of the LCI. So when one comes down, the other goes up. So what I'm trying to show here, I just look back to see where are we today, which we're around 6% above the minimum funding. So I wanted to see what that number looked like and what that would mean. So you're going to be required by the state to increase what you're paying today by a little over $800,000 based on governor's version. But in order to stay where you are at about 6% above the minimum, you would need to add another $1.3 million to that. So that's when you come down to the bottom number, the $2.1 million. And so the possible new funding that we're showing there is, okay, if you are able to give us the $2.1 million, you know, that's making up $1 million hole in the state revenue. So we still only have $1.2 million to even look at for any kind of salary increases, any other operating increases that we have, or any other priorities that we feel are necessary for our school division. Okay?
Quick question again, Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
So when you mention operational, so it's not only just the operations of the school itself, but the salaries of all the folks are included in that?
Yes,
that
that's
one-
our operating budget would be staff, salary, benefits, transportation department, maintenance, all of that is our operating budget.
So that's all factored into that?
Yes.
So when you're looking at the 9 million decrement from the state there, somewhere down the line, let's say after the budget's approved, and the state says, okay, we're able to now fund you. Let's just say, for instance, the board says, okay, we're going to approve 2.1 million for the school. The state comes back after the 1st July and says, okay, we can make up $9 million. What's the feeling about the board clawing back $900,000?
So this is just a proposal. We will have a House proposal and we will have a Senate proposal. So we will end up with 3. We generally will work off of one of those to put a budget together to present to you, to the
Okay.
board, so that we'll know what type of ask that we have. And then, you know, we work from that, but the final is whatever the General Assembly approves.
Okay.
And when that happens, you know, let me just tell you that the governor's proposed budget right here is the best case scenario for the Board of Supervisors, based on what we're hearing. Because it appears that House and Senate, there's no money in this budget for a salary increase in the state, in the governor's budget for staff. We're hearing that House and Senate are not happy with that, and they do want something. I mean, I don't know, 2%, 3%, I don't know what it may be. But that's going to require local match, which means it's going to be more of an increase for the locality.
Again, based on the composite index, right?
Right.
And not just, you know, I mean,
Based
it's
on
being
the
forced on
local
us.
composite index, and then where you want to be over and above that.
Okay. So your board here, they'll have to make those decisions, those hard decisions on whether the staff gets a raise, a COLA, if you will.
Right. We'll have to work within what we have, absolutely.
Okay. All right. That's all I want, is just that clarification on that. Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? There's Mr. Dawes.
Shh.
Hey, hold on, Bunky. Hold on, get your mic.
I think if the state comes up with the 900,000, it's going to require some of that above 800,000 that y'all already have to give us, then it balances out. So that 1.2 for y'all would probably drop, but the 800 would go up. So all we're looking for is the bottom line, right? The more the state gives us, the better off
The
y'all
less
are.
we have to give. That's exactly what we're looking at.
I mean, and I know where you're going with this. I get it. And I think to answer your question quick is, yeah, if they come up with 900, yeah, we're good.
Okay.
I think it's where you were headed, right?
Okay. Well, sort of, kind of, yeah. No, and
Unless
that's
it
what's
requires a local match. Just remember, anytime we get state funding, if it requires a local match, then the local goes up as
Goes
well.
up, yep.
So at the
Understand.
point we are now, yes, we're getting less state, and that is totally based on local composite index. But as our state funding goes up, that local match is going to go up as well.
So to answer your question, if the state came up with the 900,000, y'all would have to come up with approximately 250,000 state match, right, for the 26% composite index.
Right.
So
That's correct. Yeah, and I understand that piece of it. So I'm just I'm still in that gray area of if the state doesn't, then our contribution has to go up. But if the state does, then, and we've already, say, approved the budget with a forecasted amount in there, then we have the opportunity to come back to you and say, okay, we gave you 500,000, just pulling a number out. We gave you 500,000 based on your proposal in your budget, and now we know the state's giving you that, and we're going to take it back.
We hope you don't do that.
But if you look at last year, I got a comment to make. But if you look at last year, she pointed out to you how we gave 8%, and now that's down to 6% because the state gave more money.
That's right. Correct.
So typically, it don't work in your favor.
No,
I'm just
no,
saying.
I know.
It ain't gonna work.
But it is numbers. It's all about the numbers here. And so that's what we're trying to figure out. But then when it really comes down to it, and in the back of every one of our minds sitting up here, I can almost assure you, is that assessment. We think about it 24/7 now. We're trying to figure out how to lower the taxes, and we're trying to figure out how to do what we can do with that amount of money, because we owe it to the citizens to try to reduce those tax rates, and we all are thinking about that. So I appreciate this, but that's the reason I'm kind of asking these questions, because I want to dig into it a little bit more. I want to make sure you've got what you need to operate and provide the best service possible, but also we've got to keep in mind, we can't break the bank here either to do that. So,
Mr.
and that's the reason I'm asking the questions.
Mr. Bowman, one thing, I want to give some, a little more information on that Dr. Jones gave us, school, different divisions in Virginia, okay? Now, it's complex, many different divisions, 140 some, 52 school divisions, double the men, okay? They're very fortunate. We know they're the, urban, richer areas. 40 of them, 75 to 100% over men. 34, 25 to 70% over men. Only 13 counties provide 25% or less, and we're in that category. And not y'all's fault necessarily, but men has been talked about too much for the last 40 or 50 years in the school system. That's why we're at where we're at today. It's because we stuck on men. But if we expect to retain these teachers and we expect these levels to stay rising over state averages, I think we got to take that in consideration and get the men behind us and start saying how we can grow to that 25%, 50%.
Yeah, and I agree with that. That's, no, I'm not even going to say it. That's previous boards that made those decisions to do what they did. We're having to live with the results of that. I think there's a better way, and I will talk to you more. I don't think this is form, but I think there's a better way of doing this, and it's not eating the elephant all in one bite, but it's taking small bites to get there. And we do it over time. We don't just say, this is what you're going to get this year and forget about it. But it's a constant movement in the right direction. And it may take 5 years to get there. It may take 10 years to get there. but at least we put a plan together so every board that follows us implements that plan. Do you follow me? So, and that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yes, sir. Mr. Dawes?
I'll have to say, Mr. Bowman, the previous board, I know we got a lot of new members here, right? The previous board had tried really good to do that, and they had made big strides. I've been on this board my 21st year. We were at the minimum, very minimum. Sometimes, like Dr. Jones said, we were so low, in fact, that when we got extra money from the state, Board of Supervisors had to come up with some additional funding. We were making those strides, and then what happens? COVID hit, right? Sure. And everything went south, you know, for all of us. And we understand where we're back at again today. And I agree you won't do it overnight. But I think it's important to understand where we've been, where we're at, and where we would like to be in order to maintain the level of education. And right now, we're doing it with great teachers and great staff. Absolutely. I mean, you look, we showed you the numbers. We're at the top with our pass rates. But in order for us to maintain that, we have to maintain our operating. And I understand the predicament y'all in, we get it. But I just think this is a lot of reference information that new board members, I know some don't understand this part of it. You know, I know you've been in government before, so you probably do, but you know, a lot of new members probably don't. So I think it was important that we look at where we've been, how things work, what the composite index means, how it affects y'all and us, so that all the new boards, y'all have a lot of tough decisions coming up to make, and we get that. So that's the whole purpose in really going through all of this, maybe information that's old, but I think it's important for background.
Yeah, it's not old. It's very good information, by the way. I like that.
Mr. Tucker?
Mr.
Got a
Chair.
question, sir?
To my colleagues and to especially the ones that are new on the board, you know, a budget is just that. It is, if you will, it's kind of a roadmap. You know, it's not etched in stone. It's just a financial plan to be able to address, you know, the needs. And right now, the school board is laying out the needs. But at the same time, you know, we have a responsibility to make sure that we're being responsible with taxpayers' money. Number one. Number two, the taxpayers on the other end of the spectrum are also going to say that, you know, they want the quality of education, and it's up to the Board of Supervisors to make sure that we have the funding or the local match in place that's going to be able to accomplish that goal. And we salute where the school systems are right now in terms of, you know, your level of excellence, you know, with the amount that we have appropriated. Now, I was on the Finance Committee on last year, and, you know, we added additional money, you know, to the actual school budget. So we're going to take a hard and fast look at it, and we obviously, kind of like you, dragging our feet just a little bit to see exactly what the state is going to do. Once they decide what they're going to do, then obviously we can kind of get our ducks in a row, and we will certainly give you a commitment that we're going to support you.
Thank you very much for that. And obviously, as I just stated, this past year, the budget year started July 1 of 2023, and our budget was finally adopted in September of 2023. So I do not have high hopes that we're going to have a real budget come July 1. I mean, I hope so, but I'm just not sure. So just two more slides actually for you. What I want to show you now are our priorities. We have met as a staff, we have met with our budget committee, and this information will go to our full board next week for their approval. And these are the things that we want to do for fiscal year 2025. Now, are we going to get to do them all? We rarely do. So, but you know, this is what we think that we need. We want to share this with you. And of course, this is what we're going to be planning for as we move along. The first item really is in there for a placeholder. I think you all know as budget changed this year, they came back January 1 and gave a 2% raise. We really had already met our guidelines, so we were able to receive that funding And it is very difficult, if you are not aware of contract pay, to change over 1,500 employees' pay January 1. So we did give a bonus to our staff. Our board voted for that, and then they will be receiving that 2% increase July 1, because, that is ongoing funding that we receive, from the state, and we will be working with that. We would like to give average 3% cost of living to all of our employees, just to kind of just keep things going and keep up. I mean, our scales are suffering just like everybody else is. The next two items are minimum wage issues. That will happen if the General Assembly approves that, and it's my understanding that that has already gone through House Appropriations and has been approved for January 1. So, we do have some positions that do not make $13.50 at starting pay, is not at $13.50. So those adjustments would need to be made July 1 for our contract staff. And then, of course, anybody that's hourly, that would not happen until January 1. The next three items are just operating increases. We all know that these custodial, supplies, vehicle supplies, fuel, all of that is going up daily, so they're just operational increases. The bus lease funding that we have on there, we certainly would like to be able to do this, but we are moving, and this is state recommendation, I think, right, Mr. Scott, to move from a 20-year replacement cycle to a 15-year replacement cycle. So back in 2009, during the recession, we had to cut out 2 bus leases during that time frame. We cut out over $1 million in our maintenance budget. We still don't have all that money back. We do have 3 bus leases now rotating out each year, but some are smaller than others. So in order for us to meet that 15-year replacement cycle, we need to beef up a couple of those so we can have, more average replacements every year. The next 2 items are some technology items that we are needing for our division. Went the wrong way, sorry. This next item, the elementary school counselors, I think you've heard me mention how we have put in a lot of mental health supports since COVID, and it is very much needed. These are our larger elementary schools. In the past, I know a couple of them had maybe 2 guidance counselors, but now they just have 1. So we would certainly like to add 1. That is a bill to change for the SOQ change. If that happens, if General Assembly passes that, hopefully we would receive some funding for that, but we would have to do that. So, I think this is another item that would be based on General Assembly action as well, if that does get to happen. And then the last item are athletic directors, which would be 1 position at each school. They would share between the middle and the high school to work through those programs. And as you see, we've asked for no, new staffing really, other than the 2 items here, but as far as classroom staff, but we will be working through that. We'll be following our enrollments. We'll be moving people around. We'll be looking at retirements. We'll be looking at resignations, any kind of vacancies, and be using that pool to make those classroom adjustments as necessary. So you see, that's $4 million of items that we would like to implement next year. So we know that is quite a reach, but it is our desire to show you what we believe, our needs are for the upcoming year.
So, quick question. What are your current vacancies? How many do you have? Teachers, the whole works. Principals?
We have no principal vacancies. We do have some teaching vacancies, just like every other profession. We are having some difficulty filling jobs.
I mean, can you give me
I cannot give, I'm sorry, I don't really keep up with.
32
Is that
teaching
classroom?
positions?
It's not just teachers, it's mainly teachers.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Right, we have people in those
Sure.
positions right now, are taking care of those, but we just don't have a full-time position there.
Okay. And those folks are your contracted people, right? They're your contracted people. So, okay, so when do you do your contracts? And is it before the end of the school year?
Yes. We try to do those the 1st of May. We want to get those out before our staff leaves for the summer because, they're free to accept contracts elsewhere before
That's
they
right.
sign here. So that is always our goal, to have that done
Okay.
before the school year ends.
Good.
And that's May 23rd, 22nd, something like that this year.
Good, thank you.
Okay?
Yes. Mr.
And
Chairman.
that's
Yes,
all
sir.
that we
Mr.
have for you.
Got a question, Mr.
I have a
Tucker?
quick question, just on the buses and these lease contracts. Do you happen to know maybe the average age of these leases on the buses and how they're being rotated out? And is there a way we can maybe plan for those?
Mr. Scott would be happy to possibly answer that question for you. So, because I do not know the age of our fleet, I am sorry. We do have bus leases that rotate every year, so we do buy new buses we've been buying anywhere from 7 to 11, just depending on which lease comes up each year. The problem that we have right now, just like with any other vehicle, is it took us 2 years to get our last buses. And right now, we do not officially have any on order for this school year. They're working on it, but, it's just like trying to buy a new truck. It's very difficult. Some spares, yeah.
Right. So if I understand you correctly, we're not there yet on a 15-year.
No, sir.
Still doing 20. Okay.
That was really my question. Okay, thank you.
Another question on the buses. Didn't y'all have 2 EVs at one time? Are they still in operation, or how are they working out?
4.
4 EVs? Okay.
No current plans to expand that at present, but we do have 4 that are currently in service.
Yeah, I know it's some issues on EV vehicles, so I figured you didn't get a lot of service. Don't make long trips on them anyway, do you? Right. Hard to get up in one, yes, sir. So y'all plan not to get any more, just stay for gas and diesels? Okay. Yeah, all right, thank you. Thank y'all. I had a question for Ms. Vanderhyde also. Do you know to date what amount on the 1% sale tax that we have accepted from the state through our taxes? I know you was waiting for December. Have you received that?
I can look on the website real quick.
Okay, that's fine. I just thought
And
about
that
it.
money is invested. We made sure that Vincent's got that in an interest-bearing account. So, we are getting the most return on our investment as possible. Let's see. I know that by May of this year, we're estimating to have $2.5 to $2.6 million.
Good.
And I think we're
that
opening
would-
bids
I think Mr. Jones has spoke
March the
earlier
7th
about a 2.1.
for our first projects.
Was it 2.1 million for your security entrance?
Well,
Was that
2.5, I think.
2.5, so we will maybe have enough there to pay for that,
Yes.
for the security?
Could
That'd be
pay
great.
that with
Good.
cash.
Okay. Good.
Now I can't find it on the website. Of course I can't.
So any other questions for me?
No?
I'll get
Any
it
more
to you,
questions
Darryl.
for Ms. Worley?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Ms.
Good job.
Worley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, Dr. Jones.
All right, gentlemen, any more questions from the school board, board of supervisors? Anything, Mr. Dudley?
Yeah, I think the majority of the board stayed the same, but I wanted to welcome Mark onto the board. I think he's going to be a good asset for you guys. I think he's going to do you a good job. So,
All right, if no more questions, meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.